Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Tuesdays for the Poetry. I'm your host and resident poet here, coming to you live from Catskill, New York on August 1st, 2023. Tonight, we'll be hearing poems from the year 2020, when I was the age the ages of 34 to 35. And we'll get started this evening with not a book review, but a what I got from the Criterion channel. I'm sorry, Criterion Collection Barnes and Noble sale. I had 30 items, over 30 items in my uh, shopping cart, and I asked myself the question, but what would I like to keep with me forever? What's something that I know I would like to keep with me forever? So I went down to two. So the first is something that's so essential. The Seventh Seal, Ingmar Bergman. Took a Bergman class in my undergrad, and it was wonderful. It was through the World Languages and Literature department at Portland State University, and the professor was taught Scandinavian languages, and the wonderful part about that department was that they allowed for some of the foreign language teachers to teach specialty classes in their um, in their interest areas. And for this um, teacher of Scandinavian language, he taught both Norwegian and Swedish. Um, he went with Bergman, and I was very thankful for that. We saw most of Bergman's major films, and any of the other ones that we didn't watch in the um, class, I soon watched on my own. And then the other is probably my favorite movie of all time. If someone were to ask me, what's your favorite movie of all time? And that's Children of Paradise. Children of Paradise. L'Enfant du Paradis. And it was made in France during the occupation and of France by the Nazis. And it's just an incredible film that showcases the romanticism, I guess, of 19th century Paris. But mostly it's just about the human heart and the things that the human heart wants, and the different people who have said hearts. It's a beautiful film. Jean Louis Barrault um, plays a mime in the movie, and it's an unforgettable performance. Unforgettable. So we'll start tonight with a poem called Primal Herd. Herd. The Primal Herd. The primal herd, overburdened, lie down on heap of rags. Everything escapes but tension, makes of disappointment glad. The arbitrary hour, Floridians must wait for sleep to sink. Every dream treasures some original deceit. Follow several threads. Life passes you over. Land is supple holdings of any which way you can smear blood for the love of country on white foreheads. No baptism or Ash Wednesday. Cross, poor, command of functions. Muck up the woods. No, nothing is sacred. Apart from the whole, the primal herd moves without moving. These pledges Walking door to door, knock, knock, knock. Nobody home. Leave the literature. The power of music on the soul yields to nothing but literature. Music, non-stop, with images galore double down the pathways in and out. Real fake doors, the soul avoids foreclosure, feels with the eyes alone pleasant comfort, quiet ranges of land, great big billowing dimensions of flag. These pledges are given not to him but to democracy and the just city, ear gymnastics to listen for the flip of words which twist culture aright. Socrates died, but sophistry lived along the very sound, faded to knock 'em flat. So Socrates is mentioned in that poem, and we got Plato mentioned in this one. 2020, I was going back to Plato. Good thing to do every now and again. This one's called A Second Face. A second face, what they want you to acquire. Sesquiquadrate, frustration, delays, and setbacks. But Plato didn't stand for power and transformation. He saw a world living in a ruin, unaware of the stone's memory, and so rejected the edifices of shadow they called knowledge. Self remembering reality can be sensed finer than spider silk. The horror and the scope of it has never been in the dark. Moonlight is ash, besotting and blunting what is taken for glow. Angles of beauty, peekaboo, but never truly show. Next, we have Poem for the Bat inside the community theater. The community theater is now, um, it's not it's not that it isn't owned, it's just unoccupied. It's our local theater here in Catskill, and the last few movies that I saw there, I noticed that there sometimes would be a bat that would be flying across the screen. So they had had a little bit of a bat infestation problem. If you're freaked out by bats, uh, keep your ears closed on this one. But this one is to the bat inside the community theater. Bats are wonderful, amazing creatures, um, mammals who fly. You are warm blood and fur on wings, guano dropping curtain call feeder. You make the backflip of ancient whales to brood within the fluid of Earth's old lungs. What have you brought back into this deep belfry's clanging? A marquee of no times, theater staging vacant players. Only your velvet flapping against the light, the transgression which makes us fear, as we fear suffering any bite from nature. That would transform our image into the darkness we glimpse in the unholy mirrors of cinema. You are phantom, nocturnal, echolocating, the gnats risen from splattered soda and snacks, dropped within this manufactured cave, asleep soon, without hunger, for our entertainments. The next poem, I got the honor of workshopping with Paul Muldoon, and it has a bit to do with uh, John Chapman, who we know as Johnny Appleseed, and but also to do with teaching and sex work. So here we go. To Sir with Apple, which is a play on a film, uh, for those of you that know. It starts with an inkling. You smear it with your hand, get it in your whorls, and it marks up everything you touch. They like to say sex worker was the first profession, while the unenviable task of teaching proffers all the more applause and thrice less the pleasures. Kept in a vase of Gerber daisies, like a school of fish dropped into a well, sit and shit their scales, working to unlearn, learning to work as chapmen, set out from Leominster to minister seedlings on the frontier of no finality, where a palm prints over the pine wood promises, tempts, teaches, like a psalmist, or a professor, or a sex worker. Okay, now we have lore, Lore. This will not be a poem about uh, Data's evil twin brother from Star Trek Next Generation and Picard, but uh, just lore is in folklore, or the lore of, in this case, a relationship. Dark water at the foot of the mountain, some rough translation of magic worked out for the rippling expanse of unsalted water, meeting salted sea in the bay behind me and you. Our cottage, rented near the edge of the earth, we bicker over stove kindling and local beer in the out of season night, and you're teaching me through you, digging into, after, detecting the doubloons, the pair we can win or discover. I am photographed with the bay behind me. I remember laughter in your bitten cheeks, beaming through the scattered, diffused, wetted down light. Lore lingers and isn't fable, does not instruct, though epic fights personify nature's fire just under the surface. Juan de Fuca. With her, the journals of Plath and reading, and my collection of Lowell, grappling with the 24-hour imitations of mad and sad and love. Was that imitation? Was real until it wasn't. Cycles end unlikes it. First to frequent cemeteries with, first to welcome me as family, first to shatter that distance between my eyes and my nose, first to return as friend and give or lend sense to the shell of a broken body collected up again, all but broken as a body collected up again. It's nice when a relationship ends and there's a friendship afterwards. Doesn't always happen. Okay, next we have playing country at the campfire. I have an image here from California wildfires that was ongoing at the time of the writing of this poem. You can see that the poem itself has a shape and the fires are central to it, and it kind of resembles a smoke cloud. It's a concrete poem, if you guys remember those from school. Becoming is not an involuntary process, though it lies much closer to submission than self annihilation. Pregnant pause. Old gas and coal fumes rise nostril high enough to enter you into the ride. We all do, but what is to be done? A violence of individualism. Forego enlightenment. See this light, red mornings, hilltop, infrared, no device needed, a mass of coughs up blood, carbon dames in morning, like pleasure? California is itself a literary invention and plays paradise, parking lot, musical chairs with itself. No kings buried beneath invention and plays paradise, parking lot, musical chairs with itself. No kings buried beneath, but the innumerable bones of elder cultures. Europe was planted like potato crops in soils, never singing harmony, only a lonely melody. O Roy, O Roy, reel in the sad fish we all expected you to land like Bopper and Buddy and Patsy too. Plane crashes most unnatural, like flight itself. Command perhaps a signal, just as easy to break up, but geez, we was talking about land, not air. It's music that took us there, and California, fire season. Smoke a negligence of utility, not forest management. The shock that bittersweet sunsets doesn't have to be forgotten, subsumed by identity. If soon this whole planet be, if when, a furnace, in space will look lifelike, a veil upon a veil. Rita Hayworth in negligee. Damn, ill, done. Not too many poems tonight. We've got about 20 poems tonight. Next, we have Birthday Card. She loves me forever. She wrote it, and I read it past midnight when the masks have fallen off faces and walls are dark. 17 weeks and 17 poems for my very first. She is not, though she is ninth. 9 the Norse number of endings, before the road of silk carried over nothing. 0. Between us is new linen, lines in my cheeks, crinkles in corners of eyes, that caressed another orbital period from one passing midnight to another. I reach out, knowing not if I grasp, but I hold what takes me because it is her love and it is not nothing. We roll on in a wagon train. Through time's wilderness, we draw lines together, and I lay some into poems. Just realized I didn't like that last stanza, so maybe we'll take it out. Here's a great one. The Poetry Wars. The poetry. Have you heard of about the Poetry Wars? We've heard about the Culture Wars. War in Afghanistan. Poetry Wars. Someone coined that in the 90s. So let's see what this is about. Okay. Rearward, the advance stumbles over ornament, turned into dance. Shakers ringing with celibacy rebel in their own austere ecstasy. Blank and free curses reproduce the Macbeths of schools the teachers reversed, or thought they unearthed in their students. Once the line was dropped to the floor, English imprudent or transatlantic gave us the lie to start up the war. Wittier men fought with their words, as in religion, until the body must sing how the poet identifies with the body and its joyful crying, or the grief work of trying to. All right, now we have hats and poems. You try your hand at making hats, while I try at my desk to write poems. For both of us, there's a need for material, and also for us both time and patience. But for you, there are for us both time and patience. But for you, there are patterns to follow and struggle with, all teaching your fingers and eyes to pair like couplets, 12 dancers, and your arms 13, which was the age I became a poet. Your wrestling has rules, rules which turn warp into woof, and all the scraps left to curl in the wind of the maker rushing to crown a head. Across the room, I grapple some unknown form haunting me, asking me either to submit or get inventive, wayfaring with some arcane device, other sailors, other grapplers left to rust in the wind. So why can't I follow computations, trace new routes alongside makers of this material? Knowing unrest and dancing alone, I struggle against the typical stitches to make my own bizarre hat that might not ever come into fashion. So I wrote that last poem 5 days before I got news that my father died from his third and final heart attack back in June of 2020. Um, so flew out to Oregon, had to deal with the final arrangements. Not ultimately final because we still haven't had any kind of service. COVID was, of course, continuing as it does today, and but was still rather scary in 2020. So risked going out there. Had to work with the crematorium and they eventually mailed the ashes. So my father's ashes are in a box, and they mailed it, and I got a note in the mailbox to go pick up my dad's ashes. And so this is a poem about that called "In My Arms." The first time I can carry you in my arms, I walk with you down the street you can't tread, in the town you don't live in the village I do. I show you around, whispering about that building, that strange man I have a story about. I tell it to you, though you can't understand me, can't really hear me, but I speak anyways, arms around you, after the postal worker took forever to find you, what seemed like forever, what was a bit of the forever, which will be the reminder of life I live without calling on you on Sundays or planning a visit never to be made before the ER. And now you've been sent, never so light, never so thin, except for maybe when your teenage mother held you in California sun, before the Baptist swaddled you in charity and bound you in the device of family. And as your eldest, as we climb the stairs, as I climb stairs with you, it's your lightness that pulls down my tears that I can only wipe away without you in my arms. So the next poem has gone through a lot of revisions. So this is the version that we have here. Mark Kozlik of Sun Kill Moon. Since this was written, been a lot of revelations about his absolutely disgusting behavior with women, and well, you guys can look it up, but there is a reference to one of his songs called Coyote. Um, I tried in August when I came back from uh, Oregon and dealing with my dad's death, and before I started the next school year, and really tried to go have a time on my own. I took a kayak up to Wellesley Island State Park, which is along the New York Canadian border. So this is kind of about that. It's called On the Edge of America. I walked around the campsites on the edge of America, listening to Mark Kozelik as Sun Kill Moon. No more Earth? Big sad moon. Stretching my torso and its limbs sore from kayaking and my tailbone numb from sitting on a log and reading. Missed call, James Smith. I chuckled to myself with his track Coyote, who made North America, and look up to snap the eagle's nest on a telephone pole. Plan is to sleep until the Perseids peak. And I place my attention back on walking through another day in America, where camping is unpacking a patio, 2 full shopping bags of shoreline trash. With November's election uncertain, though I affirm and assume the worst with term 2 of the caricature and office, Julie Huffman. Hey, you get that job? I take mark at his well-traveled word to that stupid and crazy are badges we wear abroad, but offended and violent will make the world suffer. 2 nights, 5 hours away. So I've kept myself, which Americans like me view as a right of self-possession, and with this pandemic, the only closest I had was with a border collie sniffing me along the St. Lawrence. The Anglo-Saxon Age by John Blair. Further downriver on the Canadian side, my ancestors of the line of Cinq-Mars Goulet have their 17th century names etched into the founder's stone at Trois-Rivières. No culture is without its rips showing skin. Flip-flopping back to my A47 patch with picnic table and fire pit with grill top, I didn't want to have to compose this mediocrity. England in 1400 looked remarkably like England in 1000. I attempt to relax somewhat for the school year at the edge of America among my Americans, praying in this poem that we get hit with some neo-wise to First Amendment rights, not obligated to abuse. Okay, a few more left. We've got Dogma and Paradoxy. Make it skillful. Turn passive aggression into comedy's act of sarcasm. Throw in the kill. Drove my horse and cart past the final fence, and Joseph Bowie's coyote ran up and over it. Buzzards roost in twilight on top of pollarded limbs of a tree, swaying still like they were its very phantoms. Mars beams like a star. The civic friction of neighbors scratches the surface of a dense and dark dread. If I could live off eating pussy, I would pet and befriend every box they climbed into to ask Schrodinger's permission. Wan and desolate are my feet, curved spine and head, other climbs languishing for direction, but unsickened by the sweat of twirling. This next poem is kind of a response to Quentin Tarantino's film *Inglourious Bastards*, but it's also kind of its own thing too. This is called Same Chart as Adolf. Ah, the downfall scene of such stubbornness, alike in mania, is comedy, Tommy gunning us down. Tarantino dances Tarantella, and the Greeks, Germans too, bailed out the cultists. That was the oldest, or was it? Drop the question. Tragedy crushes underfoot like grapes, drinking to Bacchus, sorry Dionysus, who came not down with the Dorians, but crab apples and their jack make Teutonic this attack. With revisionist history, the argument of blood spilling is venom, spun apart from justifiable findings. Defilings, iron slashing apart language and its people across the nation of stronger metal, bull leapers on the urn, down in the bunker, or the cinema. Shoot, either place, the place where mass meets hysteria. Planetary tensions could be ecumenical if men are lived through again and cleansed, but not in that way. Not in that way. No ordinary ignorance. It is with such gentle chuckling that the terrible sucking of bones for the marrow begins as a pastime, as a treat given to oneself for showing up to the tragedy of life, inhaling the fresh cooked food alongside the smoking ruins of a small town. Next, we got Preacher Raspberries. Evil wind, because its warmth in November is like a rape or an essay on man's cold nature. The knobby limb, the phantom door, rolling hollow metal clinking of a can, pushed up a main street's incline by the evil southerly, keeps me awake and visible. Be aware, all is vanity, and despair not. The dead know nothing, and the sorrow of knowledge is life's sighing, which is not of this wind. Return from whence you came, virus. No wind that blows strong, but is boisterous. That's that last bit. No wind that blows strong, but is boisterous. That's from Thomas Nash, um, contemporary of Shakespeare, perhaps the greatest prose writer of Shakespeare's day. That includes Shakespeare, because of course, he wrote plays in verse. Okay, so next we have an erasure. This is an erasure of a poem. You can kind of see the poem here. So, but with the erasure, I've called it Asters. Amen poetry. Edited and slated from us by sky a face, and asters receive intercognition for work, a group of outdoor actions on the edge of 76. How asters came to poetry, men with Saudi participation. Poe collects asters, actions from the early to early, tracing a gene of action and poetry. Asters nearly a legend in us, where guarded as the initiator form, present asters show that origin of utopia, the ex-poetic reading of real life. Boys from the face. Asters force read their thought with material, do not allow work to be bounded, but pulls in elements, form of text in which text is live, his ship and roadmen, the man, Graham. All right, we're in December now. Just two left. Two longer ones. We have the first one is for genealogical purposes only. If you get to know me, you know that genealogy, investigating family history is something that I've just, inherited from my upbringing as a Latter-day Saint. But also it's, I think, an ongoing inquiry into my identity. And I've been trying to locate my grandmother, my biological grandmother. There's really not, it's really hard to kind of find out any information on her. She basically disappeared um, in the 50s, and apparently, left my biological father's family with with a new baby, and is kind of not really heard from again. Um, so the search continues. The search will probably take me to Chicago at some point, to some of the uh, Jewish historical societies there. But it's another time. So, for genealogical purposes only, this is what's printed on, or when you fill out a request for a death certificate. I was able to locate my grandmother's brother, um, a bachelor, lifelong bachelor, and I thought maybe by getting his death certificate, I might be able to get a little bit more information on other family members, 'cause sometimes they're listed, especially if they live together, but that wasn't the case. So, kind of hit a dead end. So, Dad had had an unexpected death just as he was going to follow the call, go into seminary or somewhere holy, and now he's just gone. When we hate what we don't understand, it's the waste basket for hope. He couldn't quite congregate around his own self. Founded an order instead of taking them, a council convened of one and one book. Things have to get really bad before the eels all make it back home. I seek out the lost dead in the search results, netting fewer and fewer specimen. I mail a form and $10 check for the certificate of death, the vital record of my grandmother's brother, descendant in Iowa City, January 86, age 70, in the hope I could find her or his children, never married. Father's name not available, mother's name not available. Old bachelors run on both sides of my family. To be dead and unknown is the fear that drives us like a whip toward the rabbit chase of immortality, toward breeding with unidentifiable organs. Swift had it right. To age would be disease if it were forever. Dad just wanted one more wife, to know his birth mother, and to congregate, which may have all been the same eel. Okay, last poem is a Portland poem, Portland, Oregon. It features a murderer by the name of Jeremy Christian, who pulled a knife in a hate crime on a MAX train in the Hollywood district of Portland, Oregon. Two people died, and one survivor, also a poet. I follow this story from the beginning, mainly because that train and that MAX stop was one I know extremely well, and the other was just it was just an example of white supremacist violence in a town that I spent a decade in and really was ignorant of the history. Portland, Oregon, has ever been since the 1920s the Northwest epicenter of the Ku Klux Klan, and there's and now we have something very similar in the Proud Boys. They just don't wear white, and they don't hide their faces as much. But what's interesting is that in his backpack, Jeremy Christian, the murderer, I can say that because he did go to trial and was convicted. he had 3 books in his backpack. He had a copy of The Exegesis of Philip K. Dick, which is a very large book that I remember shelving um, when I worked at Strand in the basement on the tables team. And he also had a copy of the Sagas of Icelanders, which again is another very thick book. And there's a big belief in white supremacist circles in the United States that they look at things like the Vinland Saga and evidence of Vikings uh, settling in the United States before any other European peoples as a kind of land claim. And then, of course, there's lots of connections that the Germans made with the Nazis made with Wagner and the Vikings. If you don't know, being a blonde hair, blue eyed Teutonic race. So obviously he was sort of there's like Philip K. Dick, science fiction writer. Um, Very out there mind. And then the Sagas of the Icelanders, but then also the last one that he had was he had a copy of the Book of Mormon, um, which I don't know whether some missionaries visited him, and then he had that in the backpack or what. But it's an odd collection of these books. So the books sort of found themselves in the poem as well as Jeremy himself. So it's a lot to say. So I'll just read the poem now. This is not the exegesis of Philip K. Dick, but the exegesis of Jeremy Christian. First time on TV, he's in his American flag cape, but heroes who wear capes shred like potatoes in turbines or wind tunnels, tunnel through mountains like max lines, running through hollows we've left behind. That rapturous intensity, coloring cheeks red on white men's faces. Beneath that security blanket, knotted at his neck, 1 month before, neck on 3 others were opened, a fealty to Woden, the chainmail for all Hallows outlawry. Insanity plea hard to argue when kinship with Philip K. Dick is superficially batty and murder is not sacrifice. See poem under the banner. Nor does a scorn pole in a black t-shirt make life unmatter. The button for the buttonhole. Smith's transmutation, the Book of Mormon 3 of 3, that Holy Testament lacking any poetry or vernacular in some vestigial form, prose Ada or land claim. I'm still discovering what the Reformation means to me, what the Restoration meant to him, or who were the elder missionaries, just seen them. With the last name like that, it's another flag, a winding sheet, a shroud on the coffin of irony, next to Ricky and Taliesin crossing each other over. Ichthus. Benign deity, wall-eyed, but uncrazed. Okay. Thanks for joining me tonight for the 22nd night of Tuesdays for the Poetry. Our first in August. It's a full moon, I guess, out there. I'll have to take a look and see it. The skies have been nice and clear, and the air has been breathable, good and breathable. My partner and I are going to head down to the New York Botanical Gardens tomorrow, celebrate our anniversary, and we hope it'll be a good time. We heard there's a farmer's market there too, which is nice. So tune in next time for another Tuesdays for the Poetry. These are our last nights together, as I've been opening up my veins and bleeding out in front of you with these poetry shares. So it's been a long haul. Appreciate you for showing up, and take care. Read some poems this August. Peace.